Hey, morning, and welcome to the latest episode of Talking Baldocks with me, Matt Baldock, and me, Matt Baldock. As some of you know, we own the HMO network, a network for fantastic agents who specialise in HMOs, and we've got the annual conference tomorrow. So, my brother, who really heads that up, to be fair to him, is busy preparing for that. But we preach consistency, so we didn't want to miss a week. So, you just have to put up with me, I'm afraid. What I wanted to talk about very briefly, only maybe 10 to 15 minutes, is about kind of data versus stories. So I've noticed over the last maybe year or stuff, data's become the really fashionable thing. And don't get me wrong, it is important, but as with everything, estate agents and people come out, becoming data experts, agents get obsessed with it. And I'm not sure that all data works. And I'm not sure that it should be used over stories because ultimately it's what's going to win you more valuations. But it's the new thing, and I think sometimes we're getting a bit carried away with it. So the issue I think with data in the English or the UK housing market is that the truest data is actually the most out of date data. And by that I mean, really, if we're going to work on true data, we have to look at properties that have completed, and that's the only way we can really work out time on market, time to get to say completed, sorry, and obviously final price. The problem is, the data isn't actually made public by Land Registry maybe six months after it's actually completed. And so it's generally out of date. So again, there's a lot of companies peddling this data, but it's usually 6 to 8 months behind by the time they've got it and actually processed it. The other thing just to bear in mind is, in a world where everyone's saying, "Oh, Rightmove are using our data," all data companies are using your data. So they get the data from you. So you have it all with you. And I understand we don't always necessarily have time to get it, and they put it in pretty packages for us, but you don't always have to pay for the data. So if you're at a stage in your business where you're maybe trying to save money, you don't have the money to spend on with some of these suppliers to package the data for you, you do have it at your fingertips pretty much. So either a few clicks of a button, your CRM should do it, or if not, you can gather it all together. And don't get me wrong, it can be a bit of a ball ache, to get it at the start if your CRM isn't that helpful. But actually, if you do it every month, or look, we're in November now. If you set yourself out really an hour, 2 hours max, maybe in December, and did your whole year to date data, which I always think is very worthwhile, and then you did it every month and you just kept it on a spreadsheet. So every month, the end of every month, look back on, how many properties you sold, what percentage of your asking price you got, how many of those properties had been on the market with another agent previously, the amount negotiated for your buyer. You can get that out fairly easily. If you do it every month, sorry, then at the end of the year, you can have a nice overview. So the other thing with data, I think really is what are the public actually interested in? So I'm guilty of this. We're estate agents, right? So we find things interesting, but the public probably don't. So, for instance, there's a big thing in a estate agency, should we call them valuations? Because we don't really value properties. They should be called marketing advice meetings. The public call them valuations, right? So I just still refer to them as valuations. I've never heard the public say the word vendor, so I say seller. I've never heard the public say the word applicant, so I say buyer. And it's the same thing, really. Work out what the public, and the whole point of the data is to win you more instructions. Work out the person in the living room, what are they actually interested in? My feeling is they're interested in, can you sell their property, and are you going to get them lots of money for their property? Speed of sale is okay, but don't forget, not everybody is in a rush. And I do still think we have a thing in this country where the public thinks speed of sale means cheap. So, it used to be the best price and the quickest time possible. Not everyone wants it done quickly. So I'd be a bit careful on that one. But for me, people want to know, yes, you're going to sell it, and you're going to get them the best money for it. So some data that I would certainly be taking out on my valuations is what percentage of properties you put on the market you actually do sell. And you've got to be honest with yourself here, right? And again, it's a good exercise to see how well your business is doing. So, what percentage of properties you actually do sell, but also importantly, what percentage of properties you sell had already been on the market with another agent. So, for instance, in October, in our agency here, Charles David Casson, 25% of the properties we put under offer in October had been on the market with another agent. So that's then showing that we can sell properties where other agents haven't. That's kind of the social proof of it. Another stat I think is important is the percentage of your asking price. So again, you're saying to people, listen, my valuations are accurate. We get X amount of our X amount of our asking price. Nobody can tell you to the penny, Mrs. Seller, what you're going to get for your property. But we get, I think in October we end up at 98.9% of our asking price. So I'll take that. I think that's as close as you're going to get. And another one that I think is really powerful, and not a lot of agents do, is the amount you negotiated. So what was the starting offer on a property, and what did you end up actually agreeing at, and what was the difference there? So actually, by having me or by having my team, Mr. Seller, negotiate on this client's behalf, we achieved them an extra X amount of money. And again, it's stats, right? So you can flower it up to, so you can either do the average, or for instance, we had a big one in October because we had somebody, actually they were trying to buy two houses together, and we had to negotiate almost that as a deal. So we kind of almost negotiated about £100,000 on that. So we negotiated £146,000 for our sellers during October. So you can do that, or you can break it down and say, on average, I negotiate £6,000 for argument's sake for my sellers. So you're saying about my fee. Well, actually, I'm going to get you an extra £6,000 that people want to pay on average. And I think when it comes to not only getting the instruction but justifying your fee, showing the percentage of the asking price you get and the amount you negotiate are the ones that are really powerful. Because again, we don't quote fees here; we quote an investment in our service, and I maintain that an agent should be an investment. So by investing in me, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you're likely to get your asking price or this close to your asking price. My competitors, what they told you they get, or they're getting that. So actually, you're better off with me, or by investing with me, I'm going to get you about £6,000 on average for more than somebody actually wants to pay for your home. So I think the stats, they're the stats that you can work out really easily without having to pay for, and they're the stats that the people are probably interested in. But aside from stats, you've got stories. I'm probably going to butcher this saying, but is it something like stats tell and stories sell? But we live in a world of stories, right? That's why we like reading books, we like going to the cinema, we like talking to our mates down the pub. Life is just about stories. Um, and so when you're in someone's living room, obviously you're finding out about them. If you know what you're doing as an agent, you should really just be having conversations, finding out about their lives, and you should have stories that can relate to them. So, if it is sadly a probate sale or a divorce, okay, well, we handled one recently. The couple weren't speaking at all. So what we do, we will keep you informed at all times. We'll keep you both informed of what's going on with the house, but we make sure we keep everything separate. If it's, for argument's sake, a young couple selling a flat looking to buy their first property, we had one here recently where we just couldn't quite get to what they thought they'd already agreed a price on another property, which is never helpful. And we just couldn't quite get a buyer to give them what they thought they needed. So then we went up the chain and we negotiated on their behalf to get that one to come down a bit. And we got the whole thing moving. The one I briefly mentioned where we had selling two houses together, we negotiated that for about 2.5 weeks. And, the deal was off, a couple of times in that. No, I'm not selling for that, or no, I'm not paying any more money. We revisited it. So again, it's showing that you're actually doing work. And again, that probably justifies, the investment in your service as well, because it's not a case of, listen, we just took the first offer we got. Is we worked for 2.5 weeks and we got £100,000 more for this customer, fairly unique scenario. Or on the apartment, we had a couple just like you. Yeah, they'd found a house they loved as well. What we did was we got them a really good buyer, first time buyer. We're a little bit short on what we needed, so we actually negotiated for them because we're the experts at negotiating. We negotiated for them and actually got them money off the one they're buying. So now everyone's moving. So I think data definitely has a place, but I think stats serve a purpose. But I think stories are the more powerful piece. So people want to know that you can deal with people like them. So if you can find a story that relates to them, relates to their situation, show you're human, show you understand situations, but ultimately show that you do get the job done. So it's not just I get 99% of my asking price. That's cold. It's, listen, we will get you the best money for the house, but also we understand your situation, and this is how we've worked in the past to help people, similar positions to yourself. So yeah, I hope that kind of makes sense. Hope that helps. I'll be obviously always interested to feedback. Data very important. My key points, and don't forget the data all comes from you anyway, so you've got it. So definitely use data. I'm a fan of using real-time data, so you get there, but also get the stories behind the data and use those stories to sell and show why you are worth A, instructing, but B, the investment, the fee that you ultimately want to get, show why you're worth that. So yeah, short episode this time because I'm conscious I'm talking to myself. But as always, thank you for listening or thank you for watching. If you're on YouTube, please do like and subscribe. If you're listening to us on one of the podcasts, again, please do subscribe to it, share, let your mates know about it. And we shall be back next week with another episode of Talking Baldocks.